I want to talk about something that causes a lot of unnecessary stress at work, especially for people who carry responsibility. If you've ever had a raise conversation coming up or thought about even having one and found yourself replaying it in your head, worrying about how it would land or wondering whether asking would change how you were seen, this video is for you. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because most people are preparing for the wrong moment. There's this widespread belief that raises get decided in the meeting that you bring them up. That makes the conversation feel risky, loaded, high stakes, and it's also why so many capable people feel stuck or uncertain about their career trajectory. Let's name the assumption clearly. Let's be explicit about it. Most people believe that when they sit down for a raise conversation, that is when the raise is decided. That if they're able to show their work clearly enough, show enough impact, or make a compelling enough case in the meeting, the decision will be made right there. And that framing puts enormous pressure on the conversation itself. And it turns the meeting into something that people prepare for like a performance. People stay up late rehearsing, they worry about phrasing, and they worry about being shut down. And underneath it all is a very rational concern. Once this conversation happens, it's on record. And here's the part that most people aren't told. Inside of most organizations, raises don't move through conversations. They move through systems. Budget, precedent, internal alignment. Informal opinions that get shared long before anything is official. And by the time you're invited into a raise conversation, a lot has already happened without you. Questions like, does this make sense right now? How does this compare to others? Would this create a ripple? What happens if we don't do this? And those questions are rarely answered in the raise conversation itself. They're answered earlier, often in rooms that you're not in. That's why raise conversations often feel anticlimactic. Either it goes smoothly and feels procedural, or it stalls with phrases like, let's revisit this. Others are paid similarly. Now isn't the right time. And that's not because you handled the conversation poorly. It's because the system already knew what it would support. This dynamic shows up most clearly for a specific kind of person. The person who carries responsibility, manages work or people, makes informal decisions that their boss later signs off on, and keeps things running quietly. These are the people organizations rely on. And ironically, they're actually the least informed about how compensation decisions actually move, because no one ever explains the system to them. They assume that the system will notice, but systems don't notice. Systems respond to alignment. This is where hesitation comes in. A lot of people think, I want a raise, but I don't want this to land badly. That's not about confidence, it's about trajectory. People understand intuitively that a poorly timed or unsupported ask rarely gets just a no. It becomes part of how they're remembered. And once something is on record, you can't just pretend that it never happened. So people wait. Not because they don't want growth, but because they don't yet know what needs to be true before the conversation. This is what you actually need to know and some of the takeaways. Question 1. Compensation came up tomorrow. Whose opinion would actually matter and whose wouldn't? Not who you like, who you talk to the most, but who is actually consulted, trusted, listened to when decisions are shaped. Question 2. If someone else had to explain your role or impact in 1 or 2 sentences, what would they say? Not in a performance review, not with nuance, but in a way that could travel. And question 3. Who would actively back you and who would actively stay silent if a raise was being discussed without you? Most people don't know the answer to these questions, and that's not a personal failure. It just means you don't yet have visibility in the system that you're operating inside. So here's the important part. The factors that shape raise outcomes don't start in the conversation itself. They start earlier, and a lot of them are buildable, quietly, professionally, without drama. But you can't work on what you can't see. This is why I built a free tool called Who Knows Your Name at Work. It's a short visibility audit that helps you see who actually influences decisions about you, who would back you, and where your visibility breaks down. It's not advice, it's orientation. If this video felt uncomfortably accurate, follow Case Built. I share what actually influences your career trajectory long before conversations ever happen. So you're not guessing, overstressing, or carrying stress that just doesn't need to happen. You don't need to talk better. You just need to understand what's already in motion.